"You need to grow up." My brother said it like a joke, but the entire livestream chat laughed like it was the truth. Then I pulled the headset off. My 9-year-old son and realized thousands of strangers had been watching him the entire time, laughing at him, clipping him, turning him into content. And my brother, he didn't stop streaming. He just turned the camera toward me, like I was the next part of the show. It was supposed to be Thanksgiving, a normal family visit, a 4-hour drive I made, because my mother cried on the phone and said, "It won't be a real holiday without you." I should have known better, because in my family, nothing is ever really a holiday, only a performance. And that day, my son wasn't just visiting his uncle, he was being broadcast to the world without even knowing it. And I was about to find out exactly how far my family would go. When the camera was still rolling, the moment I stepped into that basement, something already felt off. Not loud, not obvious, just that strange electric tension in the air. Like a room mid-performance, waiting for its next line. My son Noah was sitting in my brother Derek's gaming chair, too small for it. His feet barely touched the floor. An oversized wrestling-style championship belt was wrapped around his waist, like a costume that didn't belong to him. And over his head, a headset that swallowed him whole. On the monitor in front of him, I saw it instantly. A live stream, a live chat moving so fast it looked like static. Laughing emojis, LOL. This kid is gold. Thousands of strangers reacting in real time. And Derek, my brother, was crouched beside him, phone in hand, grinning at the camera like this was the best moment of his career. "Tell them again," he said, voice slightly louder. Performative. Controlled. "What you told me earlier." Noah shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know," he said softly. That hesitation should have been enough. But Derek didn't stop. "Come on, man. You said your mom cries at commercials." The chat exploded, laughing emojis, spam, encouragement, like a crowd feeding off at Noah. Gave a nervous little laugh the kind kids give when they're trying to guess the rules of a game. Nobody explained, and I felt something in my chest go cold. "What else?" Derek pushed, smiling wider now. "What did you say about our dating life?" That was the moment I moved. 4 steps, that's all it took. I reached to Noah, lifted the headset off his head, and placed it down on the desk like I was shutting something dangerous off. "No," I said. Firm. Final. "We're done." For the first time, Derek looked up at me. But he didn't stop the stream, he just tilted the camera slightly in my direction, and the chat shifted. From laughing to watching, waiting, like they could smell something bigger, starting. Derek didn't look surprised to see me. That was the worst part. Like this wasn't something going wrong. It was something finally getting interesting. "Relax, Sarah," he said, still in that stream voice. Half calm, half performance. "He's fine. We're just having fun." I kept my hand on Noah's shoulder, but Noah wasn't fine. I could feel it in the way his body stayed still. Too still. Like he was trying not to take up space. He said he didn't want to say it, I replied. "He's 9. Derek smiled at the camera instead of me. "He doesn't know what he wants." And then, like it was nothing, he added, "This is literally how I make my living." That sentence hung in the air like an excuse dressed up as a job description. I looked at the monitor again. The chat was no longer just laughing. It was escalating. "Oh, Mom showed up. Drama incoming. Don't kill the vibe." And Derek leaned slightly toward the camera, lowering his voice. Like we were all part of some inside story. Classic older sister energy, guys. She's always been like this. That's when something shifted inside me. Not anger first, clarity. I took Noah's hand. "We're going upstairs," I said. Derek stepped slightly to the side, but not to stop me, to film me better as I walked. "Al," I could hear him talking into the stream again. "See what I mean? Zero chill. She's always been dramatic." And behind him, the chat kept moving, laughing, reacting, watching my child like he was content they were entitled to, upstairs. I didn't say anything for a while. I just sat Noah on the edge of the bathroom. Tubman looked at him closely. His eyes weren't crying yet, but they were confused in a way that hurt more than tears. Why did he do that? He finally asked, and I didn't have a perfect answer, so I gave him the only honest one I had. Because he wanted attention, I said softly, and he forgot you're a person, not a joke. He looked down at his hands, and then whispered, "Were they laughing at me?" And that question stayed longer than anything else in the room. I hesitated for half a second. Not because I didn't know the truth, but because I didn't want it to land the way it had to. "Some of them probably were," I said gently. "But that says everything about them, not you." Noah stared at the floor, his small fingers twisted together like he was trying to hold himself steady. "I feel stupid," he said. That hit harder than anything I'd seen downstairs. I moved closer and held his face in my hands. "You are not stupid," I said. "You trusted someone you love. That's not stupid. That's human." He blinked slowly. Then, quieter. "Is that why you don't bring me here much?" I didn't answer right away, because the truth wasn't simple. It never had been, before I could speak. There was a knock at the bathroom door. My mother. She opened it without waiting. Like boundaries were just suggestions in this house. "Oh, sweetie," she said immediately, her voice softening into performance. "Why don't you go watch TV? Grandpa found that dinosaur documentary you like." Noah looked at me. I nodded, and he left. The moment the door closed, the tone in the room changed. My mother didn't even look at where Noah had been sitting. She looked at me. "You embarrassed him," she said. I blinked. "He used my son for content." "Without asking me?" "He was including him," she replied quickly. "He was making him feel special." That word special felt hollow here. "I heard him say no," I said. "And I heard Derek push him anyway." My mother sighed like I was exhausting her. "Derek works very hard," she said. "That stream is his job." Then the sentence that always came next. "You turned it into a scene." I looked at her, really looked. I removed my child from a situation he was uncomfortable in. Her expression tightened. "Everything is always a crisis with you," she said. And just like that, I understood the role I had always been given in this family. Not daughter, not sister, but the problem. The one who notices too much. The one who interrupts the performance. And then, she added quietly, almost as an order, "You should apologize too, Derek. Because in this house, protecting my son was not the priority. Keeping the show running was." I didn't answer her right away. Not because I was unsure, but because I was measuring something new inside myself. For years, I would have folded here, apologized just to smooth the air, taken the blame just to end the tension. But this time, I didn't kept going anyway. "His income depends on this," she said. "You don't understand how serious this is." I finally looked at her directly. "Mom," I said quietly, "he used my child without consent." Her face tightened again, like the sentence itself was offensive. "You are being dramatic." That word again, the same blade sharpened over years. "Derek was just playing," she added. "Noah was fine." I shook my head once. "No, he wasn't." A pause. And then I said it clearly, carefully. "He told Derek he didn't want to say something. Derek kept pushing him anyway." On camera, her mother exhaled sharply. "That is not how family talks about each other." I almost laughed, because that was the point. This wasn't family, it was a system, and I had just disrupted it. "You're going to humiliate him over this?" she asked. I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger anymore. Decision. "He humiliated my son first." I said. Silence followed, heavy, uncomfortable, unfamiliar. Then she softened her voice again, shifting tactics. "Derek is upset," she said. "His numbers dropped. This affects his income." That was when something inside me clicked into place. Not loudly, not dramatically, just final. I stood there and realized something simple. No one in this room was asking if Noah was okay, only if the stream was. I took a slow breath. I hear you, I said. My mother nodded, satisfied. But I wasn't agreeing. I was observing because I had just learned something I couldn't unlearn. In this house, my son's discomfort was negotiable, but Derek's audience wasn't. And that meant I was no longer participating on their terms. My father stepped in later that night, not into the room fully. He never did that. Just into the doorway. Like emotional distance was a form of discipline. He didn't look at me. He looked somewhere past me. Derek says you interrupted his segment, he said flatly. He lost subscribers. I stayed quiet. My father continued, voice controlled, almost rehearsed. That's real money, Sierra. That line hit differently. Because it was new, but because it wasn't. It was the same logic, repeated in a different tone. Always numbers, always impact, never impact on Noah. He was having fun, my father added. You should have let it play out. That sentence made something in me go still, so I finally responded. Noah told him he didn't want to say it. I said he said it clearly. My father shrugged slightly. Kids say things. I looked at whom really looked. Yes, I said. They do, including when they say no. That word landed in the air between us. No. Simple, uncomfortable, unrespected. My father shifted his weight, annoyed. Now you're making this bigger than it is. And that was the moment I realized something important. To them, it was never about what happened. It was about what I refused to ignore after he left. I went back to Noah. He was already asleep, the kind of sleep only children can fall into, fuss complete, untouched by the weight of adult justification. I sat beside him in the guest room and watched him breathe, and for the first time that night, I stopped trying to convince myself I was overreacting. Because I wasn't. I was just the only person in the house reacting to the right thing. Downstairs, I could still hear faint laughter from Derek's stream. Like nothing had happened. Like nothing ever really counted if enough people were watching. And that's when I saw it clearly. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a pattern, and I had been standing inside it my whole life without naming it. But tonight, I finally had. The next morning didn't feel like resolution. It felt like exposure. Like the house itself was pretending. Nothing had cracked open the night before. Derek came up first. He acted normal. That familiar kind of normal that doesn't acknowledge Damajit, just walks around it. He sat across from Noah at breakfast like nothing had happened. And then he said it casually. No hard feelings about last night, right? Was just content. Noah didn't answer immediately. He looked at his juice. Then he said quietly, it didn't feel like content to me. The room froze, but only for a second. Because in this house, silence was never allowed to stay long. Derek chuckled like it was a misunderstanding. You sound like your mom, he said. I felt Noah glance at me, and I didn't interrupt. I let him decide what came next. Then Noah said something I didn't expect. Maybe she's right. And just like that, Derek's smile tightened. Breakfast ended early, too early. Everyone moved like they were avoiding something invisible in the air. By late morning, I was already packing. My mother hovered in the background, doing her usual ritual of pretending concern was logistics. Do you have enough food for the drive? She asked. I nodded. My father didn't speak much. Derek barely looked at me. But before I left, he finally said, it low, almost casual. You're really going to make this a thing? I paused, looked at him directly. I'm going home, I said. That's all. He scoffed slightly. You killed my stream. I exhaled slowly. That says a lot more about your stream than me. That was the last thing I said inside that house. Outside, the cold air hit differently, not sharp, just clean like space. I hadn't had in a long time. Noah buckled into the car quietly. No questions, no hesitation. And as I started the engine, I realized Something simple but heavy. I hadn't left a family argument. I had left a system where my son's boundaries were optional, and for the first time, I wasn't planning to return on their terms. The drive home felt longer than it should have, not because of distance, but because of everything I wasn't saying out loud anymore. Noah sat in the back seat for the first hour, quietly reading his book. Then eventually, he leaned his head against the window and fell asleep. His face relaxed in a way it hadn't been the night before. That mattered more than anything else. Outside, Ohio stretched flat and endless, like nothing had changed, but inside me, something had. I kept replaying Derek's words. It was just content. Like that explained everything. Like it erased consent. Like it turned a child's discomfort into background noise. And then I thought about my parents. How quickly they had chosen efficiency over truth. Protection of the system over protection of Noah. By the time I reached the highway outside Columbus, I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns fast. What was left was something colder, clearer. I started thinking in structure, not emotion. What had actually happened, not as a fight, but as a pattern. Derek didn't just film Noah. He used him for engagement. My parents didn't just ignore it. They validated it. And every time I pushed back, I was labeled the problem, the interruption, the dramatic one. That realization didn't hurt in the way I expected. It steadied me at home. The apartment felt different the moment we walked in, not because it changed, but because they had. Noah went straight to his room, still half asleep, still safe in the quiet I had brought back with us. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, just listening to the silence. Real silence. Not the kind that comes after a fight, the kind that comes after a decision. Then I opened my laptop, and I didn't write an apology. I didn't write an explanation. I wrote facts. What happened, what was, said what was recorded, and who it affected. No emotion added, no emotion asked, because something had shifted on that drive home. I was no longer trying to be understood by people who benefited from misunderstanding me. I didn't sleep properly that night, not because I was overwhelmed, but because my mind was finally organizing everything I had ignored for years. At 6:30 in the morning, I made coffee and sat at my desk before Noah woke up. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar, not empty, just mine. I opened my email. First, my message to my supervisor was already waiting in my sent folder. No reply yet. Too early, but that wasn't what I was focused on anymore. I opened a new draft email. This time, it wasn't about explaining myself. It was about protecting myself. I wrote everything down again, but more carefully, more deliberately. Derek's live stream, the clip, the comments on my professional page, the strangers questioning my job, the way my name had been pulled into something I never agreed to be part of. Then, I added something else. Something I hadn't fully admitted out loud before. My son had been used as content without consent, and when I intervened, the situation had been broadcast and monetized further. I didn't exaggerate anything. I didn't soften anything either. Just truth. Structured clearly enough that it couldn't be twisted later. When I finished, I didn't send it immediately. I sat back and stared at the screen, because this wasn't just an email. It was a line, a point of no return, in the distance. I heard Noah moving in his room. Small sounds, normal sounds. The kind of sounds that meant he still felt safe in the world. That mattered more than anything I had ever tried to preserve in that house. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. 3 words. You've gone too far. I read it once. Then I put the phone face down, because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel pulled back by that sentence. I felt released by it. And I realized something quietly final. To them, too. Far was anywhere I stopped being convenient. But to me, it was finally the first place I started protecting my son without apology. Derek called 2 hours later. Not through a message. Not through my mother. Directly, I almost didn't answer. But something in me already knew this was coming. His voice wasn't the stream voice this time. No performance, no audience, no confidence, just him. "Sarah," he said, "come on. I was going to pay you back." I stayed quiet for a moment, not to be dramatic, just to make space for truth to exist without interruption. "The maturity date was 14 months ago," I said. A pause. "I didn't even know there was a maturity date. It was in the agreement." "You sign?" Silence again. "This one longer?" He exhaled sharply. "I don't have that kind of money right now." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "The payment plan is in the letter," I said. 6 months. No extra fees. That's already generous." Another pause. Then his voice shifted. Not angry, not confident, just unsettled. "I can't believe you're doing this." That sentence again, as if consequences were something I had invented. I kept my tone steady. "You put my son on camera without asking me?" I said. "You pushed him after he said no. And then you posted it for views." I let that sit, then added, quieter, "This isn't personal revenge, Derek. This is response." He didn't answer immediately. And for the first time, I heard something different in his silence. Not dismissal, comprehension, uncomfortable, incomplete, but real. "I'll send something," he said finally. "Just don't take this further." "I'm not the one escalating," I replied. "I'm duck." That word landed differently. He didn't respond again. The call ended without closure. But closure wasn't what I needed anymore, because something had already changed. Not in him, not in my parents, in me. I wasn't waiting for them to understand anymore. I was only making sure their misunderstanding couldn't cost my son his safety again. And for the first time, that felt like enough. The weeks that followed didn't feel like victory. They felt like distance. My mother called twice. I didn't pick up. She left voicemails anyway, her voice moving between disappointment and disbelief, like she couldn't decide which emotion would pull me back faster. My father sent a single text. "This is not how family handles things." I stared at it for a long time because that sentence used to work on me. It used to rewind me instantly back into apology. Back into silence. Back into being reasonable. This time I didn't respond. Instead, I kept living. Noah adjusted faster than I expected. Children do that when the environment becomes consistent again. He laughed more, talked more, stopped watching my face to see what version of himself was safe. One afternoon, I picked him up from school and saw something taped outside his classroom. A Thanksgiving art project. Paper leaves, crayon drawings, small handwritten sentences about gratitude. I almost walked past it, but then I saw his. "I am grateful for my mom because she shows up." I stood there longer than I meant to. Because that word "shows up" wasn't about holidays, it wasn't about perfection, it was about presence, about choosing not just once but repeatedly, without negotiation, without audience approval. That night, I sat at my desk again. The legal folder was still open. Everything was in motion now. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady. Like something finally following the shape it was always supposed to take. Derek made partial payments, slow, uneven, no messages. Attached, my attorney confirmed each transfer. No commentary, just confirmation. And slowly, the financial thread that had quietly tied us together for years began to loosen. One night, I closed my laptop and realized something strange. I wasn't waiting for the next conflict anymore. I wasn't preparing for the next apology I'd be expected to accept. I wasn't managing anyone else's reaction in advance. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't inside their narrative. I was outside it, and that meant something simple, but irreversible. My son's life no longer had to be edited to fit their approval. By the time the final payment came through, I didn't even feel the need to mark the moment. No celebration, no message, no emotional closure waiting to arrive like it does in movies. Just confirmation from my attorney, paid in full. Case closed. I closed the folder on my desk, sat there for a few seconds, and realized something I didn't expect. It didn't feel like revenge ending. It felt like weight ending, like I had finally put something down I had been carrying so long. I forgot it was heavy. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that. My mother still didn't understand my silence. My father still called it unnecessary. Derek still existed in the same world, still posting, still building, still performing. But none of that reached the center of my life anymore, because the center had changed. Noah turned 10 in March. I threw him a small birthday party at a trampoline park 3 blocks from our apartment. Nothing elaborate, no audience, no performance, just him and his friends bouncing through the air like gravity didn't matter. I sat in the parent section with bad coffee, watching him laugh so hard he had to stop jumping for a second. At one point, he looked over at me, hair messy, face flushed, completely unguarded, and he smiled. Not the polite kind, not the careful kind, the real one, the kind you don't perform for anyone. I smiled back, and in that small exchange, something settled completely inside me, because I understood it clearly. Now, home was never about geography. It wasn't the house I grew up in. It wasn't the family name. It wasn't even history. Home was the place where a child doesn't have to negotiate their safety. We drove back that evening. Noah fell asleep in the car, frosting still on his chin from cake. And as I drove through the quiet streets, I realized something simple and final. I had spent years trying to stay connected to people who required me to shrink. But the moment I stopped shrinking, I finally became the kind of mother my son could trust without question. And that was the first real ending I had ever needed.